Today's show is presented by Glynn Smith Chevrolet-GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile.
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Really do appreciate it. If you notice, we look a little different today, and that is because we are doing today's show live from the Glynn Smith GMC Chevrolet Showroom. We're happy to be here. We're proud to have Glynn Smith Chevrolet GMC as a sponsor for the 2024 season, and we're very thankful that they invited us here today. Now, today we are going to talk about something that I think everyone is talking about at the moment. That is, of course, the trade deadline. And as we move forward, it's going to become more and more of a topic. We're hitting it very early. We've been hitting this very early. This has been talked about on this show prior to Ronald Acuña getting hurt. This is as far back as when I brought up the Eric Fetty idea. We're going to talk about all of what the trade ideas that are out there, all of any of the crazy ones that you've seen. We're going to talk about just about all of them today, and I'm even going to present a few of my own. If you have some, put them in the comments. We will get to them at the end of the show. I'm going to read as many as I possibly can. We're going to be here for about an hour, so get them in. We got plenty of time to get through them, and I look forward to doing that. So if we're going to talk about the trade deadline, one of the first things that we have to establish is that the Braves have trade pieces. I've heard a lot of people say, well, Tyler, sure, the Braves want to trade at the trade deadline and get something, but what do they have to trade with? Well, if you remember 2021, we discussed this the other night. If you remember back in 21, we traded pretty much nothing and we got plenty. Bryce Ball, a first baseman prospect, was traded for Jock Peterson, who of course became one of the legendary players in the 2021 team. Pablo Sandoval, who was on the back end of his career, was traded for Eddie Rosario, who was the NLCS MVP. Alex Jackson, a catching prospect, was traded for Adam Duvall, who hit a grand slam in the World Series. Casey Kalich, a pitching prospect, was traded for Jorge Soler, and Bryce Wilson was traded for Richard Rodriguez. That was the trade deadline that led to a World Series. And if you notice anything about that, the main thing I want you to pick up is that we didn't give up a ton, but other teams sure did. And why that is, because why would teams give up solid players for prospects? Well, number one, it's to rebuild. That's the common trend. It's to get something for the future. But other than that, it's also the idea of offloading cash. And that's what I really want the focus to be today is, hey, it is certainly possible for the Braves to get something done this trade deadline. So with that said, let's take a look at what the Braves have to offer right now. A.J. Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder, Darius Vines, Dylan Dodd, Ian Anderson, Hurston Waldrop, Alan Winans, Spencer Swellingback, who will be starting today, by the way. More on that in a few minutes. And I would even throw in Owen Murphy. If you mean to tell me that the Braves could not get something in return for a trade package with all those names included, then I think you're wrong. I certainly think a trade package could be put together with all of what the Braves have just in young pitching, much less what they have outside of that. But just because you can, it does not always mean that you should. And I'm sure that's what a lot of people are saying out there. Just because we have these prospects that we can trade doesn't mean that we should. But a lot of people are also saying that, hey, why not go for it all? We're just as competitive as we've ever been. We should go for this. But to me, the issue, outside of Ronald Acuña being hurt, outside of Spencer Strider being hurt, the issue is we're not scoring runs right now, and I think everyone will tell you that. So if you watch any given game outside of Marcell Ozuna, a lot of our guys are just inconsistent at the moment. That's clear. So to me, I think you definitely need a bat. I think you need something. But I started this season off by saying we're going to need a starting pitcher after we lost Spencer Strider. The fifth spot of the rotation has been so questionable. It's been so up and down. We do have pitching prospects, but we've already made our way through 3 or 4 of them. So for me, I definitely think starting pitcher is at the front of mind. If nothing else, for the reason of next year, you run the risk of not having Charlie Morton and Max Fried to start the season. And sure, you can make an off-season deal, but for me, I look at Alex Anthopoulos as the guy who would probably want to go ahead and ensure that he's got at least 2 or 3 starting pitchers, frontline starting pitchers, to start next season. Right now, that's not the case. If the season ended tomorrow and we did not re-sign Max Fried and Charlie Morton opted to retire, you would start 2025 with Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, and that's about it. Bryce Elder, you really run into a problem there. So for me, I think they very well might get somebody who's not only a free agent at the end of the year, but they might get a guy who's a free agent in 2026 or 2027 when it comes to starting pitching. Now, when it comes to a bat, they pretty much just need a bat any way they can get it. Ideally, you want an outfield bat. That's what we lost in Ronald Acuña. That's what you want. But you don't want to just get anybody. You want to get a bat that is, in theory, better than either Jared Kelenic or Adam Duvall, which is easier said than done. I think both of those guys have been great so far in the roles they've been in the platoon and left field, but obviously they have a new role now as starting right field or starting left field. So the Braves find themselves in an interesting position. They want to make a deal, but they don't want to just get anybody. They got to find the right guy. I addressed the idea of, quote-unquote, getting the band back together. I saw a lot of people talking about, you know what? Screw it. Let's just go get Jorge Soler, World Series MVP, Eddie Rosario, and Jock Peterson. Let's just run it back. I don't think that's going to happen. Number one, Eddie Rosario is probably the most obtainable out of those three because he is a Washington National, but he's also hitting, below 200. He's got 7 homers, but he's not exactly on all cylinders this year. Jock Peterson is on a competitive team with the Diamondbacks. I don't know that they would let him loose. Jorge Soler with the Giants, they're competitive. None of those guys are going to get rid of Jorge Soler or Eddie Rosario, or they'll get rid of Eddie Rosario. But the Braves don't necessarily want Eddie. So none of those guys really fit the bill. However, I really do think that the Braves could find themselves doing something very similar to what they did in 2021 outside of the names involved. I really think that is a case. And again, I told you weeks ago, hey, look, the Braves offense has been what it's been. It hasn't been exactly where we want it to be, but I still don't believe that we're going to have a need for a bat. I thought the Braves offense would be good enough at some point to break out of the slump that pretty much everybody's been in. You also take into account that Austin Riley has been hurt. Sean Murphy's been out for the majority of the season. Ozzie was hurt for a while. You take all that into factor, they haven't really been healthy at all. And now Acuña's out. So now I think that's what's changed my opinion. Now that Acuña is out, I definitely think there is certainly the possibility of the Braves exploring the idea of an outfield bat. And we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. But the criteria that we're going to look at this through, the lens that we're going to look at this through, you need a pitcher, you need a hitter. But to me, I think the Braves could possibly find that on the same team and in one deal. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. You could easily pick a starting pitcher. Let's say Yusei Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, and then get a bat somewhere else, right? But I also think there is a possibility of looking at teams that have both. So we're going to talk about that pretty much right now, and we're going to go ahead and the other criteria, you have to find a team that is not qualified for the postseason. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our first trade, and this is going to take us back to earlier in the year when I presented the idea of Eric Fetty. Now, the Braves would acquire Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham. I've already seen your comments about Tommy Pham. Tyler, I don't want him. He's a clubhouse cancer. I hear you. This is purely based on the data of what we have. It's not based on any kind of clubhouse, etiquette. It's not based on how we feel about him. This is purely based on the fact that he's a decent bat, and Eric Fetty is also on his team. That is what we have. And I think this would actually be pretty obtainable, considering the White Sox, 20.5 games out of the division. They're completely out of it. They're a seller. It's going to happen. Also consider that we have traded Mike Soroka. We've traded Jared Schuster. We've traded with them before. We got Aaron Bummer from the White Sox. So that's what I find interesting about it. The real get here would be Eric Fetty. Tommy Pham would just be complimentary, because to me, I don't think Tommy Pham is as much as a necessity as much as it would be an addition to the Braves' already potent lineup. I don't think it's a necessity. I think it would be, kind of nice to have if you got him. But based on y'all's opinions of it, maybe I need to reconsider. I really don't think this is where the Braves are going to go. I think if they do anything with the White Sox, it would be just to get Eric Fetty. Eric Fetty has a sub-3 ERA. He's been very good for the White Sox. He's been one of the few shining lights. He's a free agent in 2026, so that is something to consider. You would not only have him for 2024, but you'd also have him next year. If you were to lose Max Fried, if you were to lose Charlie Morton, that would be a good thing to know that you have going into next year. Again, not necessarily what it's going to be, not necessarily how it's going to go, but I think if you got him, you could ensure your rotation going forward, as well as ensure your rotation going forward for the rest of the year beyond 2026. So for me, I think this is more about Eric Fetty. I think it's more about the starting pitching. I don't think it's as much about Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham is the best option they have outfield-wise. He's got 3 homers so far this year. He's got a .294 average. And look, I mean, as much as we've talked about the off-field issues and really the on-field issues, as much as we're going to talk about that, Tommy Pham is a veteran bat. He is a guy who can perform, and he's a guy who can really be a part of what the Braves are doing this year. And he would be far from the first bat that the Braves have gotten. He'd be far from the first player that the Braves have gotten that are controversial. I mean, we've seen him over the years. It has happened before. Do I think it'll happen this go-round? I don't, because, again, I don't think that's really where the Braves' priorities are. I think it's more about where we, how we add to what we already have. And I don't think Tommy Pham is really the guy. I think you're more so looking along the lines of getting Eric Fetty and then finding a bat elsewhere if anything were to happen. However, this idea does exist, and Eric Fetty would be a great get. And again, I think it'd be very obtainable. I think if you were to trade Bryce Elder and a minor league prospects in the sense of Nacho Alvarez, I think you could land him, and I think it could be very obtainable. But for me, this is just the first. We have a lot of these that we're going to go through. Some of you are going to like them. Some of you aren't. Some of you are going to like some, but not others. It's going to happen, and that's completely okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Let's go to the Los Angeles Angels, who have had quite a disappointing season. You hate to see it for Ron Washington and where they've gone so far this year. But the Braves would acquire starting pitcher Tyler Anderson. He is a free agent at the end of the year. He's got a sub-3 ERA sitting at .252 right now. Taylor Ward, this is the real interesting part for those of you that like offense. Taylor Ward is a free agent in 27, which to me is a little bit too much to commit to based on the fact that you would be getting Acuña back next year. You do have Jared Kelenic going into next year, but it could be just an additional bat to have. So far this year, he's got a .273 average with 11 homers. That would be a very good bat to get for the remainder of the year. It could supplement what you would in theory be losing in Ronald Acuña. And really, I mentioned earlier that the criteria for a bat would have to be that you're better either than Jared Kelenic or Adam Duvall. Taylor Ward is certainly competitive in that conversation. I don't know that he'd be necessarily better than, but his numbers so far this year have been a shining light on the Angels, and I think he very well could be moved. There's a lot of conversation just in general about Taylor Ward, about the possibility of trading Taylor Ward, but to get him, you're going to have to trade quite a bit. That's my turnoff for this. I think the Angels would really be coming after a guy like Hurston Waldrop, who's been on fire this year down in Double-A, and a guy like Darius Vines. They're looking purely to the future. And before you just immediately shoot this down, just remember the Braves' window to compete is right now. Hurston Waldrop's window to be in the majors and be a frontline starter is a few years away. I personally don't like this trade. I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think the Angels are going to look across the aisle and they're going to say, okay, you want to take our best hitter, Taylor Ward? That's fine. Give us Hurston Waldrop. Give us Darius Vines. Give us a couple of guys who could be the future of our rotation. I think that's what they're going to want. So this is what I think would be the trade. This is what I don't necessarily even think it's a fair trade, but I think it's what they would be asking for. I personally don't want to trade a guy like Hurston Waldrop. I would be okay with trading a guy like Darius Vines because I think Hurston Waldrop has more upside. I think he has more potential. It's the same reason where I would be okay with trading a Bryce Elder, but I don't necessarily want to trade A.J. Smith-Shawver, right? I think Bryce Elder, we've kind of seen what we can get out of him. We kind of know where he is, and I think there's potential there, but I think A.J. Smith-Shawver could be the 5th starter right now had he been healthy following his start a week ago. So for me, that's where I stand on the Angels trade. I don't think it's a bad trade. If it happened, I wouldn't be royally upset. I would be happy that we got Taylor Ward. I'd be happy that we got a back end of the rotation guy, but I also would feel a little disappointed in knowing that, hey, we're not going to see Hurston Waldrop have a major league appearance in a Braves uniform. That would kind of stink. Same for Darius Vines. The potential is certainly there for both of those guys for the future, but I also think the Braves' window to act, the window to win, is now. Whether it's this year, whether it's next year, the window is not forever, and I don't think we can necessarily wait on everybody to adjust. Now, that said, we saw today that people can get called up from Double-A like that. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Vaughn Grissom. We've seen it with Michael Harris. But beyond that, today, Spencer Schwellingback was called up from Double-A. Hurston Waldrop is right there, too. There's no reason why either one of those guys couldn't have been called up. So for me, I think Hurston Waldrop is closer than what I'm giving him credit for in the early part of this statement. But I also think the Angels, if they're going to want anybody, they're going to want our best pitching prospect. So that's where I stand on it. With that said, we're going to give you a couple more trades, and then we're going to go to break. But the first is with the Washington Nationals. This is the one that I think is kind of like the White Sox, where it's the most obtainable. Out of all of the ones that we have in this list, this is the one that I really think is possible, because the Nationals, yes, they're a division rival, but I think they're going to be most willing to trade and to rebuild, because they've been rebuilding for years now. They're not like the White Sox where it's kind of a new thing. They know what's up. They know what they need to trade, and Jesse Winker was pretty much obtained to be traded, right? Same as Tommy Pham. He was picked up by the Nationals to be traded. Trevor Williams has been very good this year. He's got a 2.29 ERA. He's a free agent at the end of the year, as is Jesse Winker. And I think that you could definitely obtain them with a little bit less on what you're giving away, right? The Nationals would acquire, in theory, Bryce Elder, Nacho Alvarez. I think we could afford to lose both of those guys. I don't think fans would question that. I think we would get a good starter for the back end of the rotation behind Ronaldo Lopez, and then we'd also be getting a bat in Jesse Winker, who is decent. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's the greatest thing ever, because he's not, but he would be a veteran bat. He'd be a guy that you could count on. Maybe give him a couple of postseason moments while we're at it. But he's a guy that I think could fit the bill. I don't know that he's necessarily better, again, than Jared Kelenic, or he's necessarily better than Adam Duvall at this point. I don't know that he is. But I think he, again, is certainly in that conversation and could help supplement what we're losing in Ronald Acuña. So, again, that is the one that I think is the most obtainable, because, again, we're not having to give up that much. The Nationals, from their point of view, are not giving up that much. Both of those guys, free agents at the end of the year. The National season is all but done anyway, so they're not exactly going to be heartbroken that these guys are leaving. So that's the reason I think that's the most obtainable trade. Same with the White Sox. Teams like that who are 22 games out. For the Nationals, they're not quite that far out, but they're out there. I think they're certainly obtainable. Let's go ahead and go to trade number 4, and then we're going to go to break. But I wanted to present this one to you. This is with the Detroit Tigers, who we have traded with before. If you remember way back when, Shane Green was a trade piece we got from the Tigers back in, I guess that would be about 2019, 2020. Braves would acquire Jack Flaherty and Mark Canha. Now, Jack Flaherty has not exactly been what he used to be. He's not a Cy Young candidate anymore. He's got a 3.84 ERA, but he is a veteran pitcher, and he would be fine for the 5th spot in your rotation. He'd be fine for, he'd be great for a 5th spot in your rotation based on what we've seen this year. He's also low risk. He's a free agent in 2025, which I think makes him a little less likely to be what the Braves do at the trade deadline this year, because I, again, think if they're smart, they're going to try to get somebody who's not a free agent, who has a couple of years of control. That's what I think they're going to do, because right now they're left in a bit of a pickle with the sense that you're losing Charlie Morton, possibly. You're losing Max Fried, possibly. Certainly with their contracts expiring, they could find themselves in a pickle at the start of next season. But again, I think this is, again, very obtainable in the sense that you wouldn't have to give up that much. You'd have to give up in someone like a Darius Vines and someone like a Nacho Lopez. And I'm not going to use them for every trade on here, but I do think those are the types of pieces that it would take. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but that's what I think the Tigers would say. They'd want a solid starting pitcher and a solid position player to counteract what they're losing. But they're more about offloading cash. They're more about rebuilding for the future. So if you give them a future starting pitcher candidate, Darius Vines, and a future shortstop candidate, and Nacho Lopez, I think they're good with that. I think that if you're the Tigers, you're happy with that because you're offloading cash, you're rebuilding for the future. And the Tigers aren't necessarily that far away, and I don't think a guy like Darius Vines is either. So that could play into helping make that deal happen. But again, it's not the one that I think is most likely. It's not the one that I think is second most likely. This is just an option that the Braves find themselves in. Now, when we get back, we're going to get you the last few trades. We're going to talk more about where the Braves find themselves, and we're, of course, going to get through your comments as well. But for now, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Now at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika, own one of the best-selling vehicles in the USA. The GMC Sierra pickup is discounted up to $12,500 off. Roomy and comfortable, the compact SUV GMC Terrain is up to $7,750 off. And GMC Acadias with 3 spacious rows and seating for 7 are now discounted up to $7,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet. Choose America's #1 compact SUV, the Chevy Equinox, discounted up to $6,500 off. Chevy's full-size pickup truck, the powerful Chevy Silverado, is up to $12,000 off. And big Chevy Silverado 2500 HDs are discounted up to $6,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall. Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Welcome back. Again, we are here at Glynn Smith GMC Chevrolet in Opelika, of course, our presenting sponsor. We're very thankful to have them on for the 2024 season. Thankful they invited us out here today to do a live show on the road. First on the road show I believe we've ever done. I think I've done a quick couple of live streams from my phone or something from a game, but never quite with this much production. So happy to be here. Happy that you guys are here. If you would do us a favor, though, I know a lot of you guys are out there watching. Please press the like button. It really does help get the live stream to a further audience and helps us grow. And if you have not already, if you're out there and you're watching and you like what you're hearing, press the subscribe button. It does wonders for us, so please do that. And of course, hit the bell for notifications so that you know next time we go live, next time we go on the road, and all that good stuff. But let's go ahead and continue the look at what possible trades are out there. And again, we are going to go through your ideas as well, so put them in the comments section. We would certainly appreciate it. But here's what we're going to go to now. We're going to go to yet another division rival because they too have both a starting pitcher and both a position player who I think are obtainable. So let's go ahead and take a look at the New York Mets. So, New York Mets have Sean Manaea and Starling Marte. And again, you're certainly going to have a tough time, filling the need of the loss of Ronald Acuña. I don't think Starling Marte does that, but I do think he gives you a veteran bat. And he's a free agent in 2026. I think that is certainly possible. He's got a 255 average, 6 homers. He's been really good this year. He's again been one of those guys who stood out on a lackluster team in the New York Mets. Sean Manaea is a free agent in 2025, which again, to me, makes it less likely, but it does make it more likely that the Mets would be willing to let him go. He's got a 3.16 ERA. He'd fit the back end of the rotation nicely. But again, I think you're really looking for more along the lines of, hey, can we get a guy who's going to carry us into the future as much as he's going to, supplement this year? Because, yes, it's nice that we got a guy that carries into the postseason, carries in to the second half of the season, but also we need a guy who is going to be here beyond this year, in my opinion. And there are guys out there like that who we're not going to mention. We'll talk for a second once we get through all these trade ideas and give you some other guys who I think will be available. Because, again, what I'm presenting to you is not so much what I think is going to happen. It's teams that have both. It's teams that you can circle and say, hey, we could make one deal and land both of what we need. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 6, and it is with the Boston Red Sox. Nick Pivetta and Tyler O'Neill. I like this one, and I don't know why I do, but they are both free agents at the end of the year. Nick Pivetta's got a 4.20 ERA. Tyler O'Neill, 2.36 batting average. He's got 11 homers. Again, both free agents at the end of the year, so I think they're obtainable for sure. The Red Sox, again, not necessarily out of it. They're certainly still competitive, but the further they fall, the more they have to come to realize that, hey, we're gonna have to offload some cash here. Darius Vines, Bryce Elder, I think would fit this nicely. I think you could make this happen with both of those guys doing it. But for me, I think that this is, again, it's obtainable for the Braves. I don't know if they're going to want to entertain it because I don't know that it's necessarily good enough because of what else is in the market. So Nick Pivetta, I think, would fit the back end of your rotation nicely. Tyler O'Neill, again, 11 homers would be enough pop to justify putting him in over a guy like Jarred Kelenic, maybe not Adam Duvall, but he would be an Adam Duvall type player. A guy who could come in and consistently give you good at-bats, and give you good defense as well. But, again, is it likely to happen? I doubt it. This is purely just me speculating, purely hypothetical. But we do have one last one that is so far out there that I absolutely know it's a pipe dream. I'm aware of it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is purely just for entertainment's sake and just in case it somehow does happen, we have to mention it. It is with the Houston Astros. Now, the Astros have already come out. Dana Brown has already come out and said that they are not selling. However, they do find themselves falling further and further back, not only out of the division, but also the wild card. So if that is to happen, at some point they're going to sell. They have two guys who I'm very interested in. And you probably are already aware of one of them based on the photo that you clicked, the thumbnail. But there's another guy who I kept off of there for good reason. Both of them, Justin Verlander and Kyle Tucker. Now, Verlander is a free agent at the end of the year. I think he moves at the deadline if it gets any worse for the Astros. Kyle Tucker is not a free agent until 2026. To make this happen, you're going to have to give up quite a bit, probably more than what I have listed. A.J. Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder, Nacho Lopez, I would even throw in Darius Vines. You'd have to give up the farm to make this happen. Now, the reason I included it, the reason I put it in here, if it is just such a pipe dream, the reason I put it in here, if it is this unlikely, is because the GM of the Astros, the guy that said they're not selling, is a former head of scouting for the Atlanta Braves. Some of you probably know that, Dana Brown. Some of you probably know that, but a lot of you may not. He is the former head of scouting. So you toss him the idea of getting some of the guys who he scouted and who he saw the potential in, A.J. Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder. I remember when Bryce Elder was drafted. I remember that well, and Dana Brown speaking on the potential. So, again, I think if you throw that at him, you could attract some interest. And the Astros find themselves in the position where they're not necessarily sellers. They're not exactly fire selling, but they may need to come to grips with the fact that, hey, the talent that we have is kind of past their prime, and we have to start thinking about rebuilding. This could be just an easy transition period. Now, it may just be that, hey, they trade Justin Verlander, and that's the end of it. Kyle Tucker may be a guy they decide to keep around, but Kyle Tucker, he's the one guy in this conversation and all of the trades I presented to you that I think is flat out better than what we have in the outfield right now. He's the one guy that I think flat out we can circle and say, yeah, that guy would make us better offensively. He's got 18 homers this year. He's hitting .272. He's been absolutely phenomenal. Verlander, I don't have to give you his resume. He does have a .360 ERA this year, but the dude's a Hall of Famer. I don't have to sit here and tell you why we want Justin Verlander. If he's your fifth starter, you're doing something right. So that is all the trades that I've deemed that have both a starting pitcher and both a hitter at the moment. Of course, as time goes on, more teams are going to fall out of contention in theory. More teams are going to get more desperate. But I certainly think that they are so these are the teams that I think are most possible at the moment. And again, some of them may not decide to sell. But based on the numbers, based on the standings, based on where they are, it's not only likely, it's probable. And I think that as we go forward, as we look forward, I think we certainly don't need to forget about the starting pitching idea because, yes, the loss of Ronald Acuña is tough. I would argue that the loss of Spencer Strider is just as tough, if not more. Acuña, we all know, MVP, everything what he does for the Braves, we know. But so far this year, the real struggle, for me at least, has been pitching. That's been the real thing that we need to look at and say, okay, we can't trade away our entire offense, but we can make some trades to adjust the pitching. And I think that's really the first priority. The offense, I don't think offense is necessarily fixed by trading. You can add, you can supplement some, but I don't think you're going to flat out fix it. I think that has to be fixed kind of at home, if you get what I'm saying. Austin Riley has to get healthy and get back right. Matt Olson is starting to heat up. Sean Murphy is back. I think that's the kind of thing that will make us better. But until that happens, I don't see a real point in trading for a huge bat. So for me, I think if you can expect a big blockbuster, it's going to be for a starting pitcher. We're going to talk more about trades when we come back. Of course, once again, we are at Glynn Smith Chevrolet-GMC. They are our presenting sponsor. They were nice enough to host us today. Really appreciate it. Having an on-the-road show, and we really appreciate all of you tuning in. Before we go to break, I want to remind you, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on with your Atlanta Braves, and of course, right here at Braves on Deck.
Now at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika, own one of the best-selling vehicles in the USA. The GMC Sierra pickup is discounted up to $12,500 off. Roomy and comfortable, the compact SUV GMC Terrain is up to $7,750 off. And GMC Acadias with 3 spacious rows and seating for 7 are now discounted up to $7,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet. Choose America's #1 compact SUV, the Chevy Equinox, discounted up to $6,500 off. Chevy's full-size pickup truck, the powerful Chevy Silverado, is up to $12,000 off. And big Chevy Silverado 2500 HDs are discounted up to $6,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall. Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Welcome back, guys. Really appreciate all of you tuning in, and we have quite a bit to talk about. I mean, look, I've presented some trades to you. I certainly have not presented all of them to you. I am fully aware of that. I have seen every rumor you have seen. I saw a rumor earlier today talking about the possibility of us trading with the Blue Jays and getting Yusei Kikuchi and Bo Bichette, of all people. I've been sitting here presenting outfielders to you, and a lot of people are out there saying, hey, we could improve shortstop by trading for Bo Bichette and putting him in over Orlando Arcia. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. But I would also argue that, hey, I don't think Orlando Arcia is necessarily a problem. He's got a .245 average, I think 6 homers. He's been pretty good, right? A lot of people are pitching the idea of trading with the Oakland A's and getting Brent Rooker and getting Mason Miller. I don't necessarily hate that idea. But I don't necessarily think bullpen is our primary issue either. As much as I like Mason Miller and as good as he's been, and he has been lights out. He's been the best thing the A's have had so far this year, in my opinion. But the Braves, if you remember, have the 7th best ERA in baseball when it comes to their bullpen. They have the best bullpen ERA, 2nd best bullpen ERA in the National League, only behind the Dodgers. So again, I don't know that the bullpen is the issue. You could argue that, hey, we might need some more high-leverage guys, and that is certainly a conversation to be had. I don't think you're wrong. But there are also other ways to trade, right? There are other ways to put this together, right? I've only presented you teams that have both. What about the teams that only have one, right? What about the teams that only have a starting pitcher? What about the teams that only have a good hitter or good offensive or good outfield bat, right? I think, you look at someone like the Rays, who have Zach Eflin and Zach Littell, who are both free agents in 2026. You have teams like the Blue Jays, who do have Yusei Kikuchi. I don't think Bo Bichette will be a conversation piece, but I think Yusei Kikuchi very well could be. I think the Mets have a ton to offer if they decided to trade. I think you could look at a ton of different teams. You could look, at just bats if you wanted to look at just bats. You could pick and choose however you want to do it. You could just go get Ahmed Rosario from the Rays. You could just go get Jesse Winker from the Nationals. You don't have to include a starting pitcher. It's just a way to bundle and save, right? That's the way I look at it, and that's the way I think an Alex Anthopoulos would look at it. Brent Rooker from the A's intrigues me. I don't know that the Braves are necessarily going to want to commit because he's not a free agent until 2028. He's got 11 homers this year. He's sitting at 286. I like him. I think he's a good talent. The A's will certainly trade, but they're going to want the house for him. And the other aspect of it is, do you want to commit to having Brent Rooker for the next 3 years? I don't know if that's necessarily where you want to go. Again, I don't hate it. If it happened, I wouldn't necessarily be upset about it. But I think that ultimately you're looking at, a situation where it's you can pick and choose at that point, right? You can go say, hey, look, we see that you have Tyler Anderson and Taylor Ward if you're talking to the Angels, but we only want Taylor Ward. Tyler Anderson, doesn't really fit what we want. You can pick and choose that way. I think there's multiple trades that could happen. The key here is that the Braves have a lot of options either way. They have a lot of options for a starting pitcher. They have a lot of options for an outfield bat if they so choose. They could do a lot of different things at the deadline. But remember back to 2021, and we discussed this to open the show. If you remember back in 2021, the Braves did stuff that we did not see coming at all. I mean, we were live for the trade deadline. We plan to be live for the trade deadline this year as well. But we were live for that trade deadline, and it was, I remember, not being able to keep up, right? Because all of a sudden, Jock Peterson was traded well before, but all of a sudden, Eddie Rosario is happening, Adam Duvall is happening, Jorge Soler is happening, and you're just surprised and surprised and surprised over and over and over again. And I think something similar could happen where, yes, we can sit here and predict, we can sit here and try to put it together, but I think ultimately the key here is just to know that the Braves certainly have options, which is why I think we're going to do it. Now, for them to be active at the trade deadline, they have to be relevant at the trade deadline. They have to be competitive. The Braves are still certainly within the wild card picture. They're certainly there. They've qualified for the wild card, but they're 5 games back in the division. If the postseason ended today, they would be in it. But they wouldn't necessarily be where they would tell you they want to be. Now, some of you are out there saying, well, Tyler, who cares about winning the division? Haven't you watched the past 2 years? Haven't you watched how the playoffs played out? The Phillies didn't win the division. All of a sudden, they beat us, and here we are. Why not? Let's just be a wild card team and see what happens. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I would also say the Braves are not going to be that way. They're not going to go for that. They're going to want to win the division. They're going to want to be division winners every year, right? That's why they have 5, 6 in a row. That's why. That's why they had 14 in a row years ago. So for me, I think as much as we're talking about the potential of them, just saying, hey, I could see them being successful as a wild card team, right? Just the way the Phillies were. But the reason that I'm not necessarily for just throwing your hands up and saying, okay, well, we'll just be a wild card team and we'll just see what happens, is because when you are a wild card team, you have to put your team through another week of playing, right? And sure, you may not be hot when you start, but the Phillies, have they made it to a They've made it to a World Series. Have they won it though? No, and that's because, if you ask me, they're gassed. So is that right? Not necessarily, but that's just the way I feel about it. I think the Braves are certainly not going to give up the idea of winning the division. Some of you are like, well, they're 5 games back. It's over. They've lost Acuña. Just remember, they were 10.5 games back when they were down to the Mets a couple of years ago, too. So I don't think it's over. I think it's far from over. But when we get back, we're going to talk about what you guys want to talk about. Get your comments in. I'm looking forward to hearing from you when we get back.
Now at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika, own one of the best-selling vehicles in the USA. The GMC Sierra pickup is discounted up to $12,500 off. Roomy and comfortable, the compact SUV GMC Terrain is up to $7,750 off. And GMC Acadias with 3 spacious rows and seating for 7 are now discounted up to $7,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall at Glynn Smith GMC in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet. Choose America's #1 compact SUV, the Chevy Equinox. Discounted up to $6,500 off. Chevy's full-size pickup truck, the powerful Chevy Silverado, is up to $12,000 off. And big Chevy Silverado 2500 HDs are discounted up to $6,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until fall. Make your way to Glynn Smith Chevrolet in Opelika.
Get ready to smile.
Welcome back into our On the Road show from Glynn Smith Chevrolet-GMC's showroom. Happy to be here, and again, happy to have Glynn Smith on as our presenting sponsor for the 2024 Major League Baseball season. As we move forward in this live stream, now is your time to let us know what you think. So get your comments in. We're going to try to get through as many of these as possible. Of course, the Braves do play tonight. They play in probably about an hour, so we'll, of course, get off of here before they come on. But until then, we're going to get through as many of these as we can. New Turbo says, we want someone who will fit well with our club, not toxic, and who can control his emotions. We don't need Tommy Pham. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I spoke about this the other day. I was talking about Tommy Pham. I've just kind of presented the idea that he's out there, and I got the comments, similar to yourself, that were like anti-Tommy Pham completely. And I don't necessarily disagree with you because the Braves make such a big deal about the clubhouse, and they're one of the few teams that really do make that big deal. And when I presented this trade, again, it was purely for the idea of, hey, look, this is out there. This is, a possibility. It's not necessarily something that I think will happen, but it is certainly something that can happen. So in terms of the clubhouse, I don't think we're just going to go and sign people because they're out there. I certainly think the clubhouse factor is a factor for Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves front office. So if that is a factor, Tommy Pham may not be the guy. Of course, he famously smacked Jock Peterson over fantasy football a few years ago. He said stuff about Ozzie Albies and his contract. I've heard all that stuff. So if that's a factor, if they, maybe they've had conversations with him and say, what's the deal? Maybe they talk about it. He's certainly not be the only controversial figure the Braves have ever signed. But I think specifically with the Braves and Tommy Pham, you're certainly right in your assumption that we need someone who isn't going to be a clubhouse cancer. And I think he could be. So I agree with you. And I appreciate your comment. I appreciate all of your comments. But Turbo, yeah, I completely agree with you. Robert Wilson says, not that an outfielder wouldn't be nice, but I honestly think we could manage with what we have in the outfield. We've definitely got the bats if they'll get hot, but you never have too much pitching. I agree. That's why I presented the idea of both. But no, starting pitching is where I started my trade deadline search earlier in the year. With the loss of Acuña, I think you could definitely, get some depth in your outfield and just in your offense in general. But for me, I completely agree with you there. I think that, starting pitching is certainly the priority, and if it's not, then what are we doing? Because right now you only have 4 solidified starting pitchers. And some of you may say, well, that's good enough for the postseason. Yes, but you have to get to the postseason for it to be good enough in the postseason. So I think we could certainly add a little something on the back. But, we'll see what happens. I think as time goes on, the more we'll know. But, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think pitching needs to be the priority. I think that's where the conversation starts. If you're talking with a team, if you're looking at where we are, I think you're talking about you're starting with, hey, you have Eric Fetty. We want to talk about a trade, and then when it goes to, okay, well, we want Hurston Waldrop and so-and-so, that's when the Braves may say, okay, well, we want a guy like Tommy Pham. We want an outfielder. We want a Luis Robert or something like that. Luis Robert has been hurt this year, but he's a free agent 26, so he may be dealt this offseason, this trade deadline too. I don't know if the Braves would be in on it, but I certainly wouldn't mind it. Let's see. Robert also says, not to mention you never know how rookies will perform in the playoffs when they've never experienced it. Agreed. I completely agree. I think that the way we are, that's kind of why I want a veteran, right? Like starting pitcher for a back end of the rotation guy, it's not necessarily the biggest deal because in theory, once you get to the postseason, you're going to go with your top 3 guys. They're going to pitch majority of the time anyway, so it's not like the end of the world if you have a rookie. But it also, it also could be decided with a rookie. You just never know how the postseason is going to unfold. So I think we certainly would like to get a veteran. That's kind of what appealed to me about Jack Flaherty is, yes, his numbers aren't great, but if you got him in the postseason, he's not a slouch, and he's certainly still got more to give. So for me, that's where I'm at with it, but I agree with you there. Willie Marshall wants to talk about Brian Reynolds. This is one that seems to come up at least once a year. Brian Reynolds, the Braves have certainly been in conversation with him over the years. The Pirates are an interesting team. I go back and forth with them. They're very interesting. But I don't think they're going to trade Brian Reynolds. They have too much coming up, too many prospects. They're actually competitive to some degree this year. I mean, they're 3 games out of the wild card. It's not like they're in the mix, but they could be. Paul Skeens has been great. But the other component of it is, as much as I like Brian Reynolds, he's not a free agent until 2031. I don't think the Pirates are going to let him go. They have him at a fairly affordable rate, 8 years at $106 million, so they're paying him right around, $13 million a year-ish, around that. So, I mean, it's pretty affordable for a guy like him. I don't think they're going to let go of that. It's definitely a team-friendly deal. It's definitely a Braves team-friendly deal. But I don't think they're gonna let go of that. Sports Daily says we have plenty of guys that are tradable: Murphy, Waldrop, Alvarez, Cabello, Smith-Shawver, Dodd, etc. Owen Murphy, I hope is who you're talking about. Yeah, I agree. That's kind of where I wanted to start, was just establishing the fact that yes, we have trade pieces. I get that we don't have the farm system that we used to have, because we used to be the top ranked, right, some years ago. All those guys are in the majors now, or they've moved on to bigger and better things. Or, for me, I look at what we have in the minors, and I certainly see players that other teams would want. So I wanted to start it with that, because I knew that's what was going to happen. Somebody was going to say, well, Tyler, we don't have anything to trade. We certainly have pieces to trade. New Turbo says, would the Pirates even entertain? Yeah, no, they would not. He also says, please don't re-sign Charlie Morton again. Here's the thing, right? Charlie Morton's had a couple of bad starts in a row, but before that he was really good. I assume he's going to get back to where we expect him to be. Charlie Morton can also pretty much, in my opinion, write whatever he wants on his check and get paid that because of what he did in 2021 in the World Series. The guy is a legit veteran, a legit starting pitcher. He's not a guy who's a flamethrower. He's crafty. Sometimes it doesn't exactly go well, but for the majority of the time, Charlie Morton is just fine. If he wants another year, I assume the Braves would give it to him, especially when you consider the fact that Max Fried, for all intents and purposes, is likely gone next year. That's just my opinion. Do I think that it's a given that that's the fact? No, but I certainly think that it's likely that he will re-sign elsewhere. Just based on what we've seen in the past with Freddie Freeman, Dansby Swanson, folks like that, I just don't see him hanging around. Willie Marshall says Jack Flaherty would be a great starting pitcher to target. The Tigers did not contend in the AL Central. Yeah, that's why he's on here. That's why he's on the list. That's why he's being presented to you, is because I think that this is something that very well could happen. And I think Mark Canha is an kind of an underrated piece that we didn't really talk about. We didn't really touch enough on. Mark Canha's been really good this year. He's, former Met. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so you wouldn't be committing a ton to him. He's got a 244 average and 6 homers. He's been solid. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's the best thing in the list, but this would be a trade that I think would make a lot of sense and could make the team better for sure. And Jack Flaherty is certainly a component of that. Let's see. New Turbo says, we need Jocktober. Look, as much as I love Jock Peterson, and I do, I just don't see that happening. I don't see the Giants trading Jorge Soler. I don't see the Diamondbacks letting go of Jock Peterson when they're only 3 games out of the wild card. I just don't see it happening. If any team would do it, it'd probably be the Braves right now, but I don't think they're going to do it. Scooter Puff says Randy Arozarena is a name I'm seeing online. I don't hate the idea of Randy Arozarena. I looked at his stats last night. I just don't think they justified being in the list. If it happened, all right, but I don't think it's going to happen. Jake Hobby says don't trade in the division. Well, to be honest with you, I hear you, but let's be real. If we could get a starting pitcher and a solid bat, I think we would all trade within the division. Whether it's with the Mets, whether it be with the Nationals, they're not competitive. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of deal. I don't think that would be a problem. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Corey Carter says, I still say we don't have to make big moves right now. All we need at this time is some lefty bullpen help. I'm not interested in trading until we get in deep into the summer. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't want to trade right now. I'm more in of the opinion that I'm looking at trades for deep in the summer, for the future, because it's coming. I think it's definitely coming. And if we can figure out, that we have someone in the minors, I think our best option for starter is A.J. Smith Chevrolet at the moment. We'll see how Spencer does tonight. Spencer Schwellenbach, we'll see how he does tonight. But I think the guy with the most potential, the guy who can give you the best shot on any given fifth day, is A.J. Smith Chevrolet. I think he has the most offer. I think he has the most he has the starting pitching mindset that I think is needed. And, ultimately I think he's going to be our best option, for the next couple of years for that fifth spot. I just see the most potential in him. New Turbo says, I want to see Forrest Wall before we trade for a right fielder. I don't disagree with that either. I think the Braves have enough time to explore their internal options. Look, it's May 29th, right? The trade deadline is July 30th, so we have legit 2 months before we have to sit here and talk about the trade deadline, really. But I think the Braves are going to explore options. That's why you're seeing Spencer Schwellenbach get called up. That's why you're seeing, these guys being, A.J. Smith Chevrolet got a shot. Bryce Elder was called up. That's why you're seeing that happen. Now it may happen for a guy like Forrest Wall. It may happen for, other guys that are position players that we may not have otherwise put up there. But I definitely think pitching-wise, we're going to go through and see what we got. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Darius Vines get a start. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Dylan Dodd get a start. After Spencer Schwellenbach got called up, it wouldn't surprise me if Hurston Waldrop got called up. So it is what it is. DG says it's quote-unquote free 99 to hit that like button, and he is right. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications if you're watching. If you like what you're hearing, we really would love you to join the On Deck community, and the best way to do that is by subscribing. But if nothing else, just press the like button. It doesn't cost you anything. Let's see. Jake Hobby says, we will probably just keep seeing Harris, Duvall, Kelenic unless someone gets injured. No Martinez or Wall. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely going to be where we are right now. I mean, I like J.P. Martinez. I love Forrest Wall. I think that guy has plenty of potential, especially now that his bat has been, turned on. But I think right now our best option is who you just said. Michael Harris in center field, Adam Duvall, and Jared Kelenic on the corners. So, I mean, you're right. Unless someone needs an off day or unless someone gets hurt, I mean, I don't think either one of those guys are really going to get a shot. Let's see. Matthew says, Tyler, do you think there's any creative trade where AA could acquire a good but slightly overpaid player and unload David Fletcher at the same time to even out the money? We've got to get rid of that guy's contract. I haven't thought about that, to be honest with you. I mean, I know David Fletcher's contract is kind of unreasonable. I don't think anybody expected him to, be caught up in what he's caught up in right now. I think it's certainly possible. Maybe maybe MLB just decides, hey, you don't owe that guy a dime because of what he got caught up in. I don't know, but never underestimate AA is kind of how I feel about it. Let's see. Bill Gates says, no trade with the A's. We got fleeced last time in the Murphy trade, lost two great young catchers for Murphy, someone who, by his own admission, can't take the Georgia heat. Well, I it's early in the contracts. We'll see how it goes. I mean, look, I certainly, when that trade happened, I certainly was like, ugh, I don't love the idea of losing Contreras here. I really, and now he's phenomenal for the Brewers. So, yeah, I mean, Murphy certainly hasn't lived up to what we were hoping for, but I still think he's got the potential to break out at any given moment. He was good in his rehab stints. I think he could be good, going forward. Let's get him adjusted to the heat and hope for the best. Corey Carter says, if you don't want to win the division, you aren't my kind of fan. I agree. I 100% agree. Jake Hobby says, we Also, probably would have to start someone like Lopez or someone else. The rotation is what it is at the moment, right? You have Fried at the front of it, Chris Sale behind him, Charlie Morton, Ronaldo Lopez. After that, fill in the blank. That's kind of where our rotation is right now. And I think as we continue, as we move forward, I think starting pitching is going to be what we target at the deadline. If not starting, I think it's really going to be bullpen. I say that every year, it feels like, but I think bullpen can always be adjusted. But also the bullpen has been pretty good so far. It's been kind of the one thing that, has been consistently decent. Starting pitching's had its up and downs. Offense has certainly had its up and downs. So for me, it'll be what it'll be. Matthew says, Tyler, do you think Mason Miller could be traded for and then converted back into a starter? I've heard a lot of reporters bring that up because he used to be a starter. It would make him more valuable. I'm going to say no, and here's why. I've seen a lot of people talking about Marcell Ozuna, right? Because in the sense of, Ozuna's hitting well, let's stick him in the outfield, we can get a DH, and he can hit well. I hear you, but I would also say this. Marcell Ozuna has been a phenomenal DH. He's been great. He's been by far our best hitter this year. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. With Mason Miller, he's been great as a closer. He's been by far... Well, I don't know what just happened, but I appreciate you guys hanging through. I told you guys we're on the road, of course, so we're battling technical difficulties, but hey, we're pulling through. Thank you for hanging with us. Really do appreciate that. Let us know that you can see us. We would really appreciate that. Make sure we're good to go. Hopefully we don't have any more issues. I believe we are back, though. So thank you again for tuning in today and suffering through the technical difficulties alongside with us. Of course, this is the first on-the-road show we've done, and we're very excited to do it, but we knew there would be some technical difficulty possibilities, and right now we're just happy that you guys are here, so thank you for jumping right back in with us. So I think we're going to pick up right back with let's see, Easy Tiger says, good grief, man, I cannot understand why millionaires need to be illegally gambling. Well, everybody's got a vice, right? Everybody. Let's see. Matthew says, Tyler, why didn't the Braves let Spencer Schwellenbach continue to develop as a two-way player? When they drafted him, he also played shortstop. I would love a two-way shortstop. Seems they didn't give it a chance. The Braves don't do that. I remember J.R. Ritchie a few years ago when we drafted him. He wanted to be a two-way player, and they weren't going for that. And look, I mean, that's another reason when people were saying that the Braves were interested in Shohei Ohtani. Give me a break. I never saw that happening. So for me, I mean, look, the way we are right now, I just think the Braves are old school. They don't want to get into the two-way player thing. I don't really blame them. So it is what it is. Bobby Means says, Tyler, I'm not sure that Verlander would entertain a move to Atlanta. I'm not sure if that's how AA is thinking. Well, I mean, look, it's a pipe dream, right? It's just kind of hoping like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see what happens. I mean, maybe. If you don't think Verlander would want to play for a team who's won the division 5-6 years in a row, could be in the World Series contender after playing so far with the Astros, I think you're crazy. I think Verlander would definitely be interested in playing with Atlanta, but, we'll see what happens. Chris Field says, if we trade in the division, how about Brian De La Cruz or Jesus Sanchez? I've looked at those guys. I just didn't really justify the numbers. I just don't think that they're going to give you anything that Jared Kelenic or Adam Duvall couldn't give you. So that's kind of where my head is on that. I certainly looked at them, but that's kind of my takeaway. And I could be wrong, but I just didn't think it really made sense. And the other component of it was they didn't have a starting pitcher, so I kind of veered off for the Marlins. They didn't have a starting pitcher that I liked at all. I just didn't see it with the Marlins. Easy Tiger says, it is wild, though, how long ago it was. It was going to be Wright, Fried, Strider, Morton, and Sale. Wright's gone, Strider's out, Fried may be gone next year, Sale, who knows. Yeah, I mean, you look at where our pitching has gone over the past few years. I remember a few years ago it was, Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton, You had guys in the minors that felt like we're always coming up, and now we're kind of at the end of that rope. And, we'll see what happens. But the way we are right now, I think the Braves still have plenty to play around. I think that's what the whole 5-year plan was. That's what the whole rebuild was to get us back to a point where we were competitive, we were back, and we were good to go. And now we find ourselves at the end of the rope. We don't have prospects we can call upon and expect to just go crazy in the league. But what we do have is a lot of good players at the major league level already. And now you can supplement that with what you can get at the trade deadline, what you can get in the offseason. And I think, look, no one could have expected what the Braves have had to deal with this year. No one could have expected Spencer Strider to go down. No one could have expected Ronald Acuña to go down. All of a sudden, they do. So now the Braves have to respond. They can either respond on the field or they can respond in the trade market. So we'll see what happens. I know a lot of people out there are going to present the idea, well, we wouldn't have to trade anybody if we just went and signed Trevor Bauer and Yasiel Puig. You know my thoughts on that. I am not against it, but Major League Baseball for some reason is. So, it just is what it is. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of ideas out there. You're going to continue to see theories out there. I'm giving you theories, right? You're going to continue to see plenty of them. There's probably people right now scheming up a couple of theories about what trades the Braves could do. I hope to give you educated thoughts. I hope to give you ideas that make sense and ideas that could very well happen. I don't want to just catch headlines, and I hope you guys know that. But a lot of people out there do that. So, if the Braves are going to make a big splash, they're going to have to give up a big side of it too. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. We're going to answer a couple more, and then we are getting out of here. Let's see if there's any other questions. On the Go with CeeLo tunes in. Big supporter of the channel. Appreciate him. Says, interested to see how the rookie does tonight. Yeah, I am too. I am thoroughly invested to see how Spencer does tonight. I'm hoping, the fact that it's against the Nationals, kind of a lesser opponent, could help him. And we certainly would like to win the series against Washington, so a win tonight would be great. But we'll see how it goes, and we'll go from there. CeeLo, will you be streaming tonight? I'll go ahead and give you a shout-out if you are. CeeLo does live streams to just about every game. It's a great way that if you don't have an ability to watch the Braves, he does go live every night and kind of give you a play-by-play of what's going on. Would really appreciate you guys going and check out his channel. You can see it down there by clicking his name. Matthew says, Tyler, are you at the game right now? No, I'll say it again. I am actually at Glynn Smith Chevrolet-GMC. We're doing a live on-the-road show from our presenting sponsor, and thrilled to have them on, thrilled to be here, and want to give them a quick thank you for taking a chance on us and, of course, helping us grow. Want to thank you for helping us grow as well. And, of course, Chris Gates is here with us. The unpaid intern, Chris Gates, is with us. Happy to be here. He's smiling. He brought the camera today. He made all this happen. He got us back on the air when we went off just a second ago, so happy to have Chris here, and of course I'm happy to be here as well. Happy to have all of you here as well. Easy Tiger says, do you think Strider could have a quicker recovery time than normal because he used the brace as opposed to Tommy John? Apparently it's a new, better surgery. I don't know that he will. I'm not a doctor. I wish I could tell you. But what I do know is that if anybody has educated themselves on such a procedure, it is Spencer Strider. The dude is methodical. He does not let anything happen without him studying up on it. So I'm sure he's well aware of what the precautions are, what the recovery time is, all of that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how he recovers. And I expect to see him next year. I expect him to be back. I mean, the competitor he is, I don't expect this to be a career-altering thing as much as it is just a simple setback. Joe Reese says, Soler is having a slow year. I think he is possibly the Giants. It's a possibility that the Giants might trade him. He caught fire with Atlanta before. Well, actually, before the Braves traded for him, he was on fire with the Royals back in 21. He became a legend with the Braves, but he was on fire before that. With a slow year, the Giants might trade him if they deem it worthy, but you got to realize the Braves don't have anything they can trade that's going to help the Giants right now. The Giants are in the same boat the Braves are. They need pieces now. You got to find, a buyer and a seller. And I think the Giants are buyers. The Braves are buyers. They're not both going to buy from each other. It just doesn't work that way. But it's never it's never an impossible thing to happen. But I don't see it happening now. Matthew says, Tyler, when you leave the dealership, are they going to give you a brand new Corvette? I think it's necessary. Well, first off, it's Chevy and GMC, but I don't think I'm walking out of here with a new car. Chris, do you think they're going to give us a new car? No, they're not going to give us a new car. But no, we appreciate their support and everything they do for us. CeeLo is indeed going live. He posted a link there. Make sure you're there. He's going live probably right at 7 for play-by-play tonight for the Braves and Nationals. Go give him a follow. He does a lot for you guys and spends a lot of time with you guys that he otherwise could be spending watching the game by himself. But he does a lot. He provides a great service for those that can't watch the games, and he provides an environment for, look, if you're watching the game by yourself, you might as well log in. Now you got friends to watch it with. So that's the way I feel about it. So with all that said, one more time, thankful to Glynn Smith Chevrolet-GMC for being here with us tonight. Thank you for inviting us. Really do appreciate that. Happy to be here. First On the Road show is in the books. Thankful for all of you tuning in tonight. We cannot do this show without you, so please, if you're new, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. We cannot do this show without you, so please be sure to be a part of it. Also, want to thank Chris Gates for being here tonight, getting us on the air. I actually have an unpaid intern tonight. It's rare, but we have one. So I appreciate Chris being here tonight. And really, again, appreciate all of you being here. And again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. As we move forward, we're going to have a ton of trade ideas. We're going to have a ton of content. You don't want to miss it. So make sure you are a part of it. With all that said, guys, we'll see you next time right here at On Deck.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support. Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.